In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways.
Moya, thank you for joining us one more time, guys. So I'm fetching all the diaspora children one by one. We have to understand how being dispossessed of our land and our territory affects us. Usually, you know, Bayaswenke are the ones who grew up overseas, but then they have to come back because the spirits will call them. Nokusa Mseleku, thank you so much for joining in the conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Tamak. So yes, as we were saying, you grew up the other side. I mean, you were born here, but you grew up the other side. We're going to go into your story and we want to know about how your spirituality fetches you wherever you are in the world.
So I was actually born in the UK. Yeah, I was born in the UK, and then when I was around 6 years old, my mother got married to Ubawa, and we moved here to Durban. And I went to school here, primary school for a couple of years, then Ubawa got a job in Pretoria.
Also to Baba, because Nata
Okay, so my biological father is Ulungu.
Okay.
What's England and Italian. And Kodwa Ubaba, who my mother married, Ubaba Swiss or Tobu. Ubaba he adopted me and took me on, and now manje, even though my parents are not together, any of them, he's still my father and he still holds me as his daughter. So yeah, so then we moved to Pretoria after around 2 years of being here in Durban. I really didn't like Pretoria. Like, it was not for me, just the Afrikaans area. Like, it took me the adjustment of becoming Inganeaga Zulu. Like, I learned Zulu from scratch, and I kind of reshaped my identity as a child to become a Zulu child. So then moving from here to Pretoria was like, threw me off, and I was really unhappy. And then, some things kind of went left in the family, and my mom said, do you want to go back to the UK to live with your biological dad? And I was like, yep. Take me to the white people in their own land. That makes more sense to me than what was happening in Pretoria. And then I moved back to the UK.
You want to unpack that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think, I don't know, for me, the concept of, the whole process of, Europeans that have now moved here and now born here, I understand that there is this identity connection to Africa, but I don't feel that they identify as African people. But also, they're not by blood, they're not African people, right? So I think the kind of oppression that was happening for me as a child at that point was confusing, the kind of coldness of the culture, because I was used to white people in the UK, but the white people that I was used to in the UK were a lot more kind of open, more kind of comfortable with themselves. That sounds a bit harsh to say, but it just felt like easier to connect on a heart-to-heart level with the European or the white people, the English people in England. Whereas connecting with the white people here, it just felt like I just couldn't, and I found that really strange. So I moved back to the UK, and then I moved to a super white area, which was another kind of shape-shifting of identity, to be like the only black child in my school, and I had a lot of like treatment as if I was an alien, of like, wanted to touch my head, I wanted to, they just were like, oh, this is like different, and it was quite frustrating. And then my mother came back to the UK, and we moved back to London, which is where I started. and that was a lot easier and more comfortable, and I felt at home and I connected with my people, and then 2012 I came back here and I've been kind of going back and forth ever since, and kind of people ask me, oh, what do you prefer? But both places are my home, but in regards to spirituality, I definitely feel more connected here than I do in the UK. And the beautiful thing, as I've mentioned to you before, the beautiful thing about London specifically is the kind of various cultures and people that you can get, you have access to, and that is the beauty for me, that you can, go to a Ghanaian wedding today, go to a Czechoslovakian birthday tomorrow. It's like everybody is so mixed up, and I think there's pros and cons to that. On one hand, it's beautiful to have this kind of mix of everyone, and at the same time, I think there is a part of it that stops people from being able to mutually connect.
Yes.
Because, for example, if you were to come to the UK, London now, and you said you're from South Africa, immediately, whoever's in the room, you and I already have a deeper affiliation than those whoever else is in the room, right? So there's this beautiful, there's this beauty, which is what made me start Diaspora Dialogues, of being able to have access to all these different cultures and migration stories, but at the same time, I love coming home and being able to speak my language and connect with people on a level that they know my history, they know culturally depth more than people in London would, and that's really important.
So when does your spirituality, like Amasiko and the black way of doing things, when do you now start feeling that, hey, yes, there's something more?
I think since a child, being able to be involved in the ceremonies that would happen at home. I remember being a child and seeing the saucer for the first time, and it was like, it felt strange in the beginning, but I also embraced it because my entire family was involved, and the whole process was fascinating to me, and it felt like a deeper connection to, they introduced me to this ancestral connection that I don't know if I would have been able to understand if I hadn't come here and spent my time here. So since a child, and then Nakula, and I've always been really appreciative of the connection that I do have to the Sindu and African or Zulu spirituality. But at the same time, like I mentioned to you before, my ancestors, like my granny, they were very worldly in their spirituality, having access to many different kinds of divinity beings, or divine beings, and ascended masters, and so I grew up seeing that around me, and so it left me very open to many ways of spirituality rather than just Indele or Jayawa. So, and then I think the time that he lived with us in London, he not directly kind of told me things, but just in the way that he would practice, in the way that he would connect with many ascended masters and divine beings. Then I was very interested in this curiosity built up within me, and then I went on my own journey of more so connecting with the divine feminine roots and understanding the goddesses from all different parts of the world, and it was easier to access because he already had that knowledge of Divine Mother, and so it felt aligned with who I am too.
When you say the goddesses and you've been learning about the goddesses, what do you mean?
So when I was around, well, I won't say, but never ask a lady her age. When I was younger, there was a time when I finished school that I kind of had this curiosity for depth, and I wanted to I've always been a spiritual being since a child, very interested in spirituality and the esoteric. But when I finished school, I just had this kind of this need for a deeper learning that I wasn't satisfied with school. I didn't feel like I'd kind of come out knowing some of the things that I was really interested in. So I did a theatre show actually, and in the theatre, as we were building the show, we were asked to kind of write down things that we would do build a show upon. And one of the things that I wrote down was Hinduism, and the teacher was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Why?" And my answer was that the thing that I appreciate about Hinduism is that they acknowledge the divine feminine. They clearly have recorded and maintained the connection to the divine feminine beings that they have, and so that led me down a huge year-long, if not continuing study of goddesses, and I just discovered more and more, and it felt like hidden because we live in a patriarchal world, so and mostly Christian and Muslim, so it felt very hidden for me, and so I was passionate about discovering all of these kind of as many goddesses as I could find. I was just reading and reading. From the Hindu side, you've got Saraswati, Parvati, Lakshmi, and then obviously with us you have Nokusa Mseleku,
and what do they mean to you? I think you've gotten to them intimately, some of them.
Yes, it's for me. It's really important actually that we have, especially as women, that we have access to knowing divine feminine beings, so that we can acknowledge ourselves in them and acknowledge our own divinity. Because it's one thing to kind of throw the term out, divine feminine, but it's another thing to actually understand the aspects of the goddess, and that to be feminine is not just Mother Mary aspect. It's not just patience and compassion. It's also fierce. Our sekmet, Kalima, we also have that destructive, that powerful force that we've been conditioned to think of as masculine. And so all of these different aspects of the divine feminine, then knowing them, you start to feel less shame about yourself and certain parts of yourself that maybe society or culturally has been oppressed within you, or you've been told, no, sit like this, don't sit like that, be like this, So it's freeing, it's liberating for me, it was liberating to kind of discover all these different ways that, all the aspects of myself are divine, all my different ways of being. I can be very compassionate and kind and loving and sweet, and on another day I may be extremely fierce, and both of those are divine equally. It's not a wild woman out of control if there's force, if there's passion, or if there's anger, but it's about channeling what for, how do you channel these emotions and keep them aligned with your own divinity.
But then when people, someone could be watching, a young girl's like, okay, what is this divine feminine energy? What are you talking about?
So I think for me, it can be quite cryptic, but for me, it's very simple. From my perspective, this entire experience is based on duality, or zero and one. Zero is the divine feminine force, the yin and the yang. Zero is the divine feminine force, the darkness from which light comes. Light is the masculine force, but one cannot exist without the other. And so divine feminine energy is the receiver, is the one who is able to receive to then recreate, and so it's almost like a limitless cycle, zero, that, it's like, for example, zero. Without zero, you cannot have one, right? Or any numbers. But also, when you're getting richer, you get more zeros, right? So it's like acknowledging the power in this other aspect.
So interesting, right? So who's your favorite? Because I mean sometimes.
Ooh, I don't have a favorite. Okay, yeah. You know, that's the goddess that I really connect with at this time, since I have discovered her and my friends, my kindred spirits have, you know, and my family have introduced me, and I feel very grateful to know and to have access. But all of them, Nkubulwane is the goddess, is the being from which all nature exists, you know. But the Kemetic way is also very fascinating, you know. According to the calendar Ma'atu, I've recently just been loving calling upon, you know, justice, you know, in every moment justice, you know, and also acknowledging that even if a moment feels unjust, that it always is, you know. Even if it feels like it depends on the perspective.
What do you mean?
Saying that everything has a counterbalance. It's you know, if it seems like it's lacking here, it's also the opposite on the other side. So it's about trying to weigh out, but also intending to acknowledge this, to try and channel the stillness when there's chaos around, to know that things are balanced, even if it doesn't feel like it. If you zoom out and you look at a timeline, then maybe, you know, you'll see that it is balanced and everything comes back around, and everything that goes down must come back up, and, you know, and vice versa.
Do you feel as if Africans who don't grow up in Africa, there's something that they miss out on? Or do you think that all civilization or life is valid? And
I think it's paradoxical. I think that with depending on how your life experience is, for example, I do feel privileged to have access to my Zulu culture and my language and I do. And at the same time, there are beings that may have, you know, grown in a home that was much more stable, and they're privileged in that way. You see, so I think it depends on the perspective of how we look at privilege, but also how we look at what's beneficial. You know, everybody has their own path, and I do think that it is important to try to hold onto the traditions and the culture so that it doesn't become erased. I'm quite bored with a kind of homogenous culture. You know, I am passionate about the beauty in multiple different cultures, and I really would love it if us as humans were able to continue to celebrate ourselves and continue to celebrate ancient culture, indigenous culture, and to revive it and to keep it alive. You know? So I think, you know, when you do move overseas, or if you migrate, then it is beautiful to try and hold on to those traditions from your culture. But at the same time, it's not my place to say that somebody who has lost their ancient culture or that doesn't have access to it isn't as it's not as valid as alive, you know. But preferably, I'm grateful for the access and the ability to hold on to and to keep discovering more depth of my culture.
so earlier on you said that the white people who are in Europe are more comfortable in their skin and more warm and more humane.
Not all, because there's football hooligans that are racist as heck, like that don't want to see, you know what I mean? So it depends.
Yes,
and I've got, you know, I know people here, people here that are also warm and loving too. So,
Yes,
but,
okay,
yeah.
no, but I was saying that you said that there's a difference between the whiteness when they're in their own territory and the whiteness when they're here. There's a different strain.
Mm-hmm.
So is it not possible that even us, there's a blackness that you have when you're here at home and a blackness?
Oh, 100%. I think more kulala, you know, kulala confidence. But when I went back, I answer the same thing. So, for example, the idea, I remember, okay, this is a story that's come back to me as a child. When I moved back to the UK, went on this pan, and this, white boy was at my school was like, he said something horrible. He said, what did you do? Did you kill your mother to get that? And the shock of like, and I was around 10 years old at the time. But it's that thing of, because I didn't have my people around me, I felt at that tender age, I felt like, so hurt, It's like, how could a child say something so disgraceful and so horrible and so hurtful and so mean? And it's because I was isolated. Similarly with growing up, like I've got a lot of wonderful Caribbean friends, and there's a lot of Caribbean culture in London. Funny confidence, planning. They were so tina. Some of my cousins and stuff, when they were growing up in school, they were bullied because Imrele Zabo was thick, beautiful African hair. But they didn't grow up feeling, not much, I don't know if they do acknowledge their hair as beautiful, because the thing was the Caribbean people were very proud of their kind of looser curls and their, and all of the things that, we've been programmed to believe over time. But that kind of inner confidence of being proud of who you are does come with being surrounded by your own people and your own culture, I think. So unless you get that kind of confidence from your home in Ekaya, where your parents or whoever you're living with is like, reinforcing pride within you. If you grow up as a child without other people that are like you, or that understand, or that appreciate or respect your culture, then it does. I observed that it can have this, and observed within myself too, that it can have this kind of identity thing where you then have to spend a longer time feeling good about who you are. Whereas Lana, if I'm here, as I was growing up here, it was, I had this confidence. Actually, when I did this, when I had so on Diaspora Dialogues, I was telling her about this story when I moved back, the white people would say, oh, where are you from? I'm from South Africa. And they'd look at me like this kind of feeling of like pity. And in my mind, I was thinking, look, you guys don't know. It was like we're driving to the beach on the weekend. The music is nice. Like it was such a wonderful childhood that I had when I was here. And when I went back to the UK, I was met with this kind of white perspective of all African children are starving and suffering. And I found that extremely frustrating.
Do you feel like that's what feeds into, because what we find is that Africans from outside, when they come here, they almost act like it's a downgrade, and they are ashamed, and they don't want to be associated, they want to be different from the other blacks. So what's that about?
I don't know. I think it's just programming, to me. I think we've just been programmed for a long time to see the West as the best of all, something that is an improvement upon what we already have. It's what touches heads. And I think we're definitely in a way better position now than we were before of being proud of who we are. But I think, it's also the reverse perspective of like, oh, it's like, no, I was supposed to see what I'm saying. And uma abanye bafuna ukuhlala la, they're running away from where they come from to live here and be in this beautiful thing. Anybody in wherever they're from, if you are there, you always think the grass is green, right? Until you go, and then and some people, like I told you, some people do get stuck with their share because so the idea of you think you're going to go there, make money, and come back with the money, but it costs so much to just live life there that it's a struggle. And then you end up sending money home, or that kind of idea of what this dream is, that something special is over there. everything that we could ever need is right here.
And I think that's what the youth need to hear. Because people are lying. The ones who overseas, they don't say, C15, you know? They just, when they come home, they buy clothes and then act as if they are rich aunting overseas.
Yeah.
And then it feeds into the low self-esteem here some more, and then they've got the self-important thing that's got nothing to hold.
Yes. I think just a really location the other day, and the views, I was like, wow. I was looking around the whole place like, this is stunning. But how lucky they are to have that those views. It's beautiful 360. Things far away, whereas Moya, especially in London or New York, it's like so built up. Like the first time I went to New York, I had like an anxiety attack. I was like, yo, because I couldn't breathe. There was I couldn't see
nature.
No, there was no nature and there was no space. It's just exactly. I mean, I love New York now, but it took me a while to get used to that thing. This doesn't feel like my spirit didn't feel settled.
But I wonder how we can, the way you say I love New York, how do we get the diaspora to feel like that about home?
I think there are a lot of, especially African Americans that have been coming here, like in Joburg, I was meeting, there was a couple of years ago, there were just like loads of African American people that have come back. And I think the music that we make is so inviting, people do connect with it. It will take some time. But also I think that, African American people, I'm really enjoying the narrative of them claiming America as their indigenous land also. Because I think the kind of West is just a concept rather than an actual history. So there are people that, it's like they've all been kind of put under this name of African American. But some of them may not be from Africa, they might be from America.
Yeah, Native American.
Yes. So I think just the whole concept of identity. But I think Abantu Bayabon, especially we're on TV, we're making incredible films and TV shows and the music and the media, we're doing really, really well at presenting who we are. And I think in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, people's perspective on Africa has completely shifted because of access to be able to see, not everybody is starving and like how we were portrayed.
McDonald's.
So
I hate how the idea of civilization is all these white things, So I'm wondering how we can shift that feeling, even with Africans all over the world.
I totally agree with you. I think the thing that frustrates me is, one of the things that really frustrates me is our perspective on architecture. Because we have a beautiful history of creating extremely incredible architectural design. And now we
nature.
Exactly, that work harmoniously with nature. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we just destroy to put these constructs that don't connect, that don't relate to who we are, that just have nothing to do with us. It's just like the new world, or like a new idea that, well, no, for me, it should look like this in our land. Where is our design? Where is our idea of what the futuristic South Africa looks like? And that's what I want us to get to. Is to start reimagining our own structures, our own spaces. We come from round spaces. Energy it moves differently in a square space. I want to a round space, and for me, round spaces again is that divine femininity. It's the roundness. I want. It allows for this motion of energy. We have a 360 auric field around us, so it makes sense that we should be living in round spaces rather than hitting the walls. But when we shift and we evolve. But I really do hope that at some point in the near future we reimagine architectural design and space design, and that works more harmoniously with us, our spiritually, energetically, and with nature. That's what I hope for.
when you say you reimagine, as somebody who's been on the outside here looking in, what does that look like? The architecture, yes, going back to our surgical thing.
I don't know. I think it kind of goes to this awakening that we're having now of really acknowledging the divine feminine aspects, because straight lines are masculine, right? So as we are living in a more in a time that has been more focused on masculinity, everything is shaped in a more masculine way, and it's been not acknowledging the feminine way. So as we grow and evolve and reawaken to remember where we come from, who we are, I hope that we will include that knowledge and that balance back into things that we do and design, and it would be wonderful to have like some round spaces that are also using newer materials or whatever, or just reconsidering what big buildings could look like, rather than just having the standard. And I think there are many places, other places in the world that have been doing that. Specifically, I love Mexico. Mexico is really wonderful at using curvature and just different ways of building. They are my number one for that. Specifically in Tulum. Excuse me. Specifically in Tulum, I love the way that they just kind of they leave the tree. They don't destroy everything to build. They build around the tree. So the staircase, there's a tree going up with you, because the tree is sacred. They're aware of that, and it's part of the legislation. Because you can't destroy this tree. I hope for that type of awareness, for us to regain that again, for us to value nature again, so that we also say, hey, clearly we can't destroy this one. It's illegal. So whatever you want to build around it, because you're never legal, not your money-making ideas.
And then lastly, why are you back? Like, why? What are you looking to find? You were outside, but now you come back home. Why?
Hey, Bayan Lisa, I feel that it's always been part of my destiny is to return home. And as much as London is also my home, and the UK, there are beautiful things about the land there. They have their own stories that are magical and beautiful as well. But for me, I love the way that we support each other as creatives here. The fact that you can call me, say, hey, doing this, and I'll be like, sharp record. Whereas in the UK, it's a lot more rigid. It's like, oh, okay, there's this kind of this rigidness that I find quite frustrating. I like fluidity. I love how we aren't afraid, or we don't have a problem with supporting each other here.
You're here for
yeah, but also, I did my yoga teacher training here with the Nest Space, and so I'm really interested in teaching, in evolving my teaching as a yogi, and obviously my musical journey as well, but as a yogi, to create access to us. Singacabangi ukuthi iyoga enyitwe kwabanye abantu from some other nations. You see, ukuthi nje asibiza iyoga, we don't call it that, but at the same time, into yethu, so phefumula kahle. I think now we are in a place where we really need to work on the inner self and trying to. We've had many years of escapism, of PTSD. Now there's a calling to reconnect to our internal selves, to find the grounding and to evolve in that way. And I hope to be a part of that movement of, contributing to us, reconnecting to ourselves.
That's beautiful. What? It's lovely. So, usually we have full-blown sangomas and sanusis on the show. And the reason I called you is because you're still on your way there, right? This is what my elders are telling me. Yeah, my elders are telling me. You're still on your way to your journey. And we are going to invite you again when you've done certain things and have those breakthroughs that you're going to have. But it's interesting to see someone who was brought up outside and in this invisible calling that's happening, and that's where your mind is suddenly like, actually, I need to, and I know I need to. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you, and we appreciate the more lessons. I definitely go for you again. Now you know when it's time to come back, so that we can really unpack now the rituals and the processes that you're going to go through, and then tell us, okay, as someone, manje, as a diaspora, guys, this is how it seemed to have affected me and affected Islam, and but thank you for taking the time to be with us, Mazwai. Thank you. Beautiful lessons. I'm going to put all your details there for you. You do amazing yoga sessions. So I'm definitely going to put your details there for people to reach out. People in KZN and Johannesburg, I'm going to put the number there so that you can go. She does incredible yoga sessions. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you again next time. Come on.
Who are you when all you were has been diluted by lies and white lines cancelling out all that which has been written of your history? Why do you look at yourself as a mystery? Doesn't the sun shine because you open your eyes? Doesn't the moon stay situated within the same stars your DNA sparkles off? Your spirit knows that surely corner into it off. Buza umoya so you may return to being well off. Because spiritually you are rich, yet your ancestors cry because you are out of reach. But yours is to command all elements while God takes inspiration from the very mirror she looked at to become. Remember who you are and never finish just when they think that with you they are done.